morning, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. And it's especially a pleasure and honor because one is always so enthused about an area which is affecting each of us in a very significant way today. Anurag talked about sleep, and health does affect us. Health and wellness, last 4 years, I think it's really grown as a huge area. But when we start focusing on our internal health, we forget there is something outside us which is also affecting us in a huge way, and that's our environment. So while we can take care of our internal health, we are in control of that internal health. To some extent, we're in control of what we eat, how we sleep, how we physically exercise, and how we keep ourselves stress-free. But are we really in control of what's happening outside us? Yes and no, both. And today we are going to be really talking about how to really increase this control. And how do we really increase this control? By the way, this talk of mine is completely impromptu because this subject is so close to my heart. How do we really increase this control over our environment? One, of course, we all know about the 3 R's. One is, of course, by reducing consumption, doing more responsible consumption. Second is reusing. And third is recycling. There are several other R's now. I'm sure you know about them. But these are the 3, mantras which were given almost about 2 decades ago. Where are we on these mantras? And, Anurag, my request to you would also be that, while we call this recycling for a greener future, I love we were having this conversation yesterday with the panelists, and I loved what Avinash also mentioned. And BK, you remember we also talked about responsible consumerism. I think time has come for us to not just talk about recycling. It was a great buzzword about two decades ago. It still is extremely relevant and very important today. But we definitely need to keep emphasizing back into reduction and reuse. So somehow, I don't know how you're going to add the 2 R's here, but please do add those 2 R's because the world has started accepting that recycling is okay, right? And I loved again one sentence which was said yesterday, which is that there was a time when too much development led to climate change issues, and now it's climate change which is, affecting development in a huge way. So till we really incorporate the first 2 R's, recycling itself is like a crippled, dog, if I may so. So just a couple of quotes which I felt, are relevant for us to share. And, every time I open Google, I keep getting shocked. So I thought it's good to always start with a shocker. 100 companies in the world today are responsible for more than 90% of all global plastic waste, according to a new research from the Plastic Waste Makers Index. And 20 of those companies are responsible for a whopping 55% of the world's plastic waste. And if this is not shocking us, then I'm not sure much more will. What it does to us, we all know already because it's all over the place. The good thing is that India is moving forward now. We are moving forward on our net zero goals. The first time we actually talked about was in 2013, when the Companies Act introduced one of the first ESG disclosure requirements for companies. Section 134M mandates companies to include a report by their board of directors on conservation of energy along with annual financial statement, right? And the latest development is from 1st October 2024, an ESG scheme will be required to invest at least 65% of its AUM in companies which are reporting on comprehensive BRSR. Now, what is BRSR? To make it very simple, I mean the long form, Business Responsibility Sustainability Reporting. So we are now getting serious because this reporting framework for the top 1,000 listed companies in India is actually mandated. So we are now moving to a space where we're not only talking about individual responsibility, we are not talking about city responsibility. I'm already, very, very active in the city front. We have developed one of the first urban forests in Gurugram, in the middle of the city, where the temperatures actually fall below 4 degrees. If you walk in, even in the middle of summer, and you are at 40 degrees, you actually experience not more than 35, 36 degrees there. So that's happened. I mean, you can see that happening in front of us. You see a lot of initiatives being taken at the residential level in terms of segregating of waste and all of that. Not enough, but yes, those initiatives are being taken. There are policy level initiatives being now considered. But what are we doing at the industry level, which are the real producers of all this waste? So are we introducing each of the speakers? Are we going to, you're all going to introduce yourselves? Okay, great. So I have three wonderful panelists here. One is Avinash, second is Varun Chopra, and Gayatri Chauhan. And then we also have online Mr. BK Soni. I think he's visible at the back right here. I'm going to first of all ask them to introduce about themselves. It's a very eclectic panel, very diverse, and what they're bringing to the table is really worth learning from. So Avinash, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Very good morning to everyone. I am Avinash, Executive Director and Partner with Earthood. This is my own startup, almost 10 years old, and we work in the space. We are the world's leading carbon validation company, and we used to work in ESG advisory and assurance. When I say carbon validation, we used to validate the projects which can generate the carbon credits. Last year, we received the world's best verification company in the carbon validation by the Environmental Finance Singapore. And we work in more than 65 plus countries, and in the last 10 years, we have executed more than 2,800 projects, mostly in Europe and Latin America. Thanks to Gauri, and I think Dr. Batra also said, some very few critical points on climate change, sleep, and ESG. So the touching upon, should I continue?
So maybe I can ask the first question and then we go on. So you've seen his background. It is in an area which is now a very critical area, which is ESG advisory and also carbon credit. So my first question to you is that can you explain to the audience and for our better and deeper understanding, how is ESG working today globally and in India? Is it being taken seriously? We have a whole regulatory framework around ESG now. Where do you see us at this point of time, Avinash?
Okay, so ESG in recent years it has gained a lot of momentum, especially I think post Paris Agreement, and when India made a commitment, not only India but all the countries made a commitment to UN that they will set a net zero target to become 2050 or 2070 or 2060. India has a commitment to become net zero by 2070, most of the Europe 2050, and some GCC countries 2060. Although it's not a new term, it's in market from almost early 2000, like environmental, social governance practices. But nowadays it has gained a momentum, and every country they have made a law that ESG report is a mandatory. In India, SEBI has also made a law that top 1,000 listed companies, in terms of market capitalization, they will have to report their environmental, social compliance as per BRSR. And now for 250, the assurance is also mandatory. Now, when we talk about this ESG, environment components talks about the greenhouse gases, biodiversity, climate change, water, waste. And social components touch upon social practices, health and safety, how inclusivity, diversity, Then governance about the transparency in reporting, top-down approach, the governance structure of a company. In terms of a circular economy or in terms of waste management, ESG play a key role. Like nowadays we are talking in terms of climate change, like as you mentioned about the ESG and climate change. So let me give you a perspective of how these are interrelated. India took a target of becoming net zero by 2070, but that target is not going to happen unless we remove the carbon dioxide or we invest in projects which can avoid the carbon. So in last many years, a lot of projects happen on the cook stove, forestry. Nowadays, the culture is coming about the carbon capture utilization, green hydrogen, shifting to different mode of transportation. Solars and wind. Although this point of time they are not additional, but 10 years before that they were additional, and people were investing in solar projects or wind projects. Nowadays, offshore wind is additional projects. So, in terms of carbon credits, so the project which can either remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere or which can avoid the carbon dioxide, they are eligible to get the carbon credits. So, say for example, if you are developing a project, if like you are distributing free of cost cook stoves to the poor people in Nigeria or somewhere in Africa or somewhere in India as well, because you are distributing free of cost, it doesn't make any business sense. So obviously, unless you get the carbon credits, it's not a business case for you. So these are additional projects. Similarly, if you are directly capturing the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and your IRR is less than 10%, obviously it will not make a business sense for you unless you get the carbon credits. So these are basically climate finance kind of a projects, and a lot of developers from US and US, they are investing in such kind of projects. Nowadays, a new trend is coming in the regenerative agriculture, sustainable, agriculture practices. We are working with a lot of clients who are into the manufacture of yarn, and they are promoting how we can grow the cotton in a sustainable way, so that the yarn, the fabric we produce is sustainable.
Fantastic.
So basically, trying to avoid the waste. And promote the sustainable practices, and these sustainable practices touch upon E, S, and obviously without the involvement of governance, you cannot have these kind of practices.
Fantastic. That's such a lovely overview, Avinash, which you've given, and so regenerative farming is very close to my heart. Been doing it for almost, spending it last 8 years practically. And just yesterday, when I was browsing through some of my emails, I discovered that this carbon credits actually coming to the regenerative farming area. So thanks for reinforcing that. That's fantastic news for a lot of farmers who are actually working very hard in this area. So Varun, would you like to introduce yourself and speak about the very niche area that you're working in and how you are being able to bring in ESG for your customers? I thought that was a very fantastic way of extending ESG beyond your own organization. So,
firstly, my congratulations and gratitude to Dr. Anurag for this pioneering effort, and thanks for having me. So, Gauri, just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Varun Chopra. I'm the executive chairman of GEAR. We're the only and first private equity funded material handling equipment company in India. More commonly known as we do forklifts, right? So forklifts is better understood. So we do all movement of materials, raw material, as well as finished goods. So we have the privilege of working in large organizations. We work in smelters like the Vedanta Group. We also work in large warehouses. So Flipkart, Reliance Retail, etc. is the privilege of some of the customers that we have long-term relationships with. Forklift cemeteries are fairly innocuous looking equipments, but when they don't work, raw material and finished good movement stops and business stops. So it's a critical cog in the wheel. It's a part of end-to-end supply chain. The specific domain is called intra-logistics. We have about 1,150 plus employees, and it gives me great pride to share that 900 plus Gauri are my forklift and MHE operators. We keep them on our rolls. My firm belief is you can have the world's best assets, but our biggest assets are our people. And you've got to have them on your board, because you can have an asset of 1 crore plus. If you don't have someone who's well trained on operating that asset with the highest level of understanding of the asset, as well as high focus on safety, please bear in mind the environments are very tough. Just to give you an instance, at the smelter at Jharsuguda, in summers, the outside temperature is 52 degrees Celsius, inside it's 56 plus. And those are the environments that my operators work in. So I think it's always a very, I would say, humbling, and as well, it's a very huge responsibility that we hold, that we ensure that we have the right environment for all our operators. Now, specifically, coming to Gauri on your question on ESG, Avinash, of course, very eloquently shared his thoughts. For us in gear, and I would like to believe that we are probably taking baby steps in that direction. I'll go reverse. I'll start first with G, which is governance. Please bear in mind that most of the employees who work in intralogistics, who work in logistics, in warehouses, even in, I would say, food delivery services, etc., are blue-collared workers. And they're governed by minimum wage criteria, which varies by state in our country. So it's very important that, we don't try to, I would say, or rather put it differently, try to be extremely fair and make sure that we don't just pay at minimum wage, but do something plus plus. So that's something that we're doing. We actually train our operators. We have awards for our operators' children who perform academically as well as extracurriculars, etc. On the S side, on the social side, it is more about diversity and inclusion. It gives me great pride to share with you that we are probably one of the only organizations in this industry who employ women forklift operators. We train them. We're the only company in the state of Chhattisgarh who have transgenders who operate our forklifts. And I often say this, and I want to be very emphatic about this. I'm not trying to do a favor to anyone. I think it's just the right thing to do. I generally don't understand this thing about diversity. I think it's about equality, isn't it? 50% of the population is women, and I think that's just the right thing to do. On a lighter note, my women operators don't drink and come to work. They don't chew gutka. They're a lot more disciplined, and they've got this hunger to prove themselves. And I think it's just good business sense, right? If you just look at it very, very emphatically and dispassionately. On the E side, we are the pioneers in zero-emission lithium-ion MHEs. We have the privilege of being number one. We've deployed 900 plus assets, ranging from very simple equipment, which is EHPTs, hand pallet trucks, right up to going to a 10-ton lithium-ion forklift, the first in the history of India, which we've deployed at Vedanta Jharsuguda. In the next 2 months, we'll be deploying the first kind of BNAs. These are the highest and most technologically advanced, very narrow aisle trucks at one of our leading automobile customers. Again, these are lithium-ion. So these are zero emission, and I think that's the key point as to how do you drive the context. These are much more expensive assets, but we have a way of engaging with the customers to show how it makes economic sense to engage.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. You've really touched a different angle. We are talking about ESG advisory here, and then you're talking about actually bringing it to your customers in a sustainable manner. So I'm now going to turn to BK Soni here, who's online with us, and BK has the accomplishment of running one of the largest. Please correct me, BK Soni here, largest e-waste recycling company. And it is, if I'm not mistaken, again, the number one listed company in this space in the Bombay Stock Exchange. So first of all, congratulations. It's wonderful that recycling has really come of age, and what you're doing in terms of scalability is absolutely fantastic. So BK, over to you. Want to understand from you, what exactly are you doing in the e-waste space? What does your company do, which is a unique proposition for its customers? And how how does what you're doing, yesterday we were having a conversation of mining versus recycling, and I think that's something which the audience may want to understand. That how do your organization use ESG to really redefine how recycling should be done versus mining, which is still being done in the unorganized sector. So over to you, Vicky.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and good morning, everybody. Thanks, BW, for inviting me to speak on this occasion. One more feature you can add to me is that I can be safely blamed to start this industry in India. As simple as that. So we started the journey almost 19 years before in 2005 as the first e-waste recycling company, and was first registered and authorized e-waste recycling company by the authorities. So it's a very long journey. We are a listed company, as you mentioned. Yes, we are the only listed company in the segment of e-waste management on the BSL. So what we do is we recycle the electrical and electronic equipment, medical equipment, lamps, fuse lamps, all these items we recycle at our end to recover different commodities out of this, primarily metals, plastic and glass, and which is being redeployed for the remanufacturing of the either the same product or the different products out of the same. So this is what we do. And as far as the industry is concerned, it is about 4 million metric ton of industry size today, which is 40 lakh tons. So that is the available material as an urban mine on the surface. We need not to go deeper into the mines to get that 4 million metric ton of material into the mines to reproduce, versus we can utilize the recycled material to redeploy for the manufacturing purpose. As far as ESG is concerned, so in any case, recycling is more environment friendly than probably the mining. This is one significant difference between the two. As far as the social is concerned, obviously it is being done in an informal manner today. Before 2005, almost 100% was done by the informal sector. Gradually it is reducing, and thanks to the regulation is e-waste management rules, which is primarily around EPR, Extended Producer's Responsibility, which is based on the principle of environment protection responsibility. And today about 4 million metric ton, which is worth about $4 billion to $5 billion. And if the producers decides to spend just 1% of their sales value, which is about $375 billion worth of electronics they are selling in India every year, if they just decide to deploy 1%, that is $3.75 billion for collection to recycling and disposal of hazardous waste, believe me or not, we can achieve 100% success in this area over a period of time. With, of course, self-governance is one more important last element of the ESG. Thank you so much.
Thank you, BK. That's very the kind of figures which you're talking about. They're phenomenal, and this is really the kind of scales we need to be focusing on in the years to come. We will come to the challenges later because they are obviously challenges in making this happen, so to speak, but we'll come to that next. So I have Gayatri Chauhan here from BuzzOnEarth, and BuzzOnEarth is a sustainability hub which looks at 4 broad areas. I will of course let her explain about BuzzOnEarth. She's doing some really cutting edge work again in the space of ESG and sustainability across organizations and sectors. So Gayatri, over to you. She has a lot of accolades behind her, so do touch upon that too, Gayatri.
Thank you, Gauri. A very warm welcome to everyone here, and thank you, Business World, for the invitation. It's my, privilege to be here among you all and share some of the work that we have done. And of course, recycling and waste management is one of the most important topics to be touched upon in today's day and age, because of the rapid pace at which we are all growing and the urbanization which has become the talk of the town, and almost every single nation in the world wants to actually live the kind of life the America has. The same journey is being traversed all over again. So it's important for us to ensure that we do not repeat the same method of development which was taken up by the West. So it's important that we are really conscious of that, and we do write our own script of development. So just to give you a bit of introduction, I run these two organizations called BuzzOnEarth and Gaia the Earth Foundation. BuzzOnEarth is a sustainability hub, as Gauri mentioned, and we focus on helping corporates on converting their aspirations on sustainability into action. So we not only help them frame their sustainability goals and help them analyze and assess the aspects of sustainability that are material to them, but also help them realize those goals in a time-bound, effective manner in the given constraints of cost, strategy, and the business goals. And we try to ensure that the sustainability goals are not something out and beyond the business goals that the organization has. That is one thing we do. Apart from that, we also have specific programs under the realms of innovation, regeneration, and youth, which I personally really believe that these are the three areas that have not been tapped into much, and that's what BuzzOnEarth is trying to do. So talking about innovation, I'll just give a little introduction on each of the three. So on innovation, we run a program called ACE, that is Accelerator for Climate Entrepreneurship. You all can check it out, and if you are yourself an innovator, you can even apply for the category that is suited to you. The website is aceindia.in. So this initiative is actually India's showcase and demonstration for the world that what kind of innovations do exist, and specifically on waste management, materiality, and sustainability related aspects of solid waste management in specific. There are some amazing ideas and solutions that we have been able to incubate, and they're part of the whole portfolio. Second, this initiative also focuses on ensuring that collaboration happens. Most of the work that is not happening in the field of sustainability is primarily because each and every entity is trying to work in silos. And we need to create platforms where collaboration happens between the governments, businesses, innovators, investors, and the right kind of opportunities are created. So that is what BuzzOnEarth focuses on through ACE India. It's a program which is also in partnership with United Nations Global Innovation Hub. And we are committed to really taking India at the forefront of innovation when it comes to climate action. So that is the work that we do on innovation. The other area is regeneration. And Gauri, you have yourself created a model, demonstration here in Gurugram. So through our not-for-profit arm called Gaia the Earth Foundation, we work on social regenerative forestry. Because forest and plantations, these two are very separate things, very different things. So the kind of tree plantations that generally people believe in, and most of the CSR money is also rooted for tree plantations, that is not going to save the world. So we need to draw the distinction between developing ecosystems. So a forest ecosystem takes care of soil, takes care of air quality, takes care of livelihoods, takes care of groundwater table, the rainwater ecosystem. All of that is taken care of just by a forest ecosystem. So we really invest and create forest, and we have a massive target. And again, this is an open invitation to all of you who are working in this space or want to be collaborative in any sense. We are on a mission to grow 1 million hectares of forest by 2030. And again, this is in partnership with United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We are the India partners for that. And whatever initiatives we take under that, will be taking India's regenerative goals forward. And just to let you all know, India has close to 98 million hectares of degraded land. And we are only talking about 1% of that. So it's still a small target, and it requires a lot of collaboration again. The third area is the youth, which is again a very important aspect. We are the youngest country in the entire world. More than 50% of our people are less than 25 years of age. So with this kind of demographic population, we have to understand our power, privilege, and responsibility to ensure the youth of the nation is not led to the same consumerist path where they end up being the liability for the country's developmental goals instead of being an asset. So we have specific programs on innovation and entrepreneurial leadership for young people, also getting them involved into sustainability programs. so that they happen to learn these things from a very early age and they are able to grow up to be responsible leaders. So these are some of the areas that we are touching upon
Fantastic.
through
That was
BuzzOnEarth.
absolutely fantastic. I think you've done a real 360 on this. And, I was also noting the Gaia, in your, and the fact that you're a woman, and then there's this Gaia. There's always a Prakriti. We know about Purusha and Prakriti, or Shiva and Shakti. So we always say that Shakti is really the Prakriti, which is nature. And in this whole space of consciousness, how do we really regenerate, support, and ensure that Prakriti is taken care of? And being a woman, Gayatri, you're doing that. So you're bringing a different element to it. That's important. So based on what you said, what is again closest to my heart has been reforesting, natural regenerative farming, and working with within a city and seeing how the community really responds to the needs of the environment, right? To sustain the environment. But I also know, because of having worked on the ground, both at a scale level where government is involved and at a level where we've taken up a piece of land and worked on it. I know the challenges which are involved. There are many, many challenges to really make it happen. So corporates still are organizations which are, where there is a kind of a governance structure. But in a space where the governance structure is weak, the challenges become all the more important. Having said that, I'm kind of very keen to know from Avinash and then Varun, BK, I hope he's with us still. And then of course Gayatri, that what are the challenges you all find in this segment, in the implementation of ESG in its spirit, not just in letter but in spirit. And we were just discussing, on the table about this whole thing called, for example, the whole carbon credit business, right? The whole investment in carbon credit. It's a huge investment. I mean, when you talk about climate change, capital coming into, climate change area, it's a huge area really, and I think it's still evolving. But there are things which are being questioned, authenticity is being questioned. There are elements which are very questionable and dubious too today in this space, right? So how do we, my first question is, what are the challenges which come in when you advise a company in ESG and you see a gap, number one. Two is, what are the trends? Are there certain industries which are catching on to ESG better, where say the whole carbon credit trading is working out more authentically? And third is, of course, what would be your recommendations in this space? That what do you see happening, evolving, maturing, and what would need to be done to take it where it is, Avinash?
Thanks, Dr. So there are challenges, yes, of course, in terms of ESG, because I travel a lot, and based on the kind of project we are doing across the world and the work we have done in the last 10 years or so, I think biggest challenge in terms of implementing ESG or implementing net zero in terms of carbon credits, the awareness. Obviously, capex is also a challenge, but that comes secondary. Once you have a sufficient knowledge or sufficient awareness, of what should I do and why should I do. So once that is sorted, obviously the second thing is about the capex. Now in India, most of the greenhouse gas emissions, they comes from the scope 3 side. Only close to 70% emissions comes from this side. And the problem is that all these big shots, big companies, you name any company from Tata, Mahindra, and all these Adanis, they have taken net zero commitment, they have taken ESG commitment even before the SEBI made them mandatory. They have a lot of funds and they want to do it anyway. But their upstream side suppliers, they still hesitate to take the commitments because they according to them, because based on my experience and I have my discussion with them, they see that we struggle in paying GST. How can we think about decarbonization? Yes, we are happy to do that if the government can incentivize us or our buyers, they can give us some sort of funds. They're happy to do that. Now coming back to the carbon credits, there are a lot of sectors who are getting carbon credits, like in the waste, because the topic about the waste circular economy, companies like Biofuels Private Limited, companies like Biogas Ramkey, they have diverted a lot of municipal solid waste from the landfill, and they are developing projects, waste to energy project. Even in Gazipur, ILFS has gained the carbon credits. So a lot of these, Ramkey, biogas, biofuels, they are getting a lot of carbon credits by developing a waste to energy projects. Similarly, I have seen a lot of awareness coming up nowadays. Almost last week I was in Harda, a district in Bhopal, and there the community over there, they are doing a lot of plantation on the forestry side, and they have a commitment. They have made a commitment to grow almost 10 million trees, and now their project is registered with Vera as well. So there's a famous tagline over there. The name of the NGO, I'm just forgetting the name of the NGO, and their tagline is that तुम मुझे पेड़ दो, मैं तुम्हें पेड़ दूंगा. So farmers, Bhopal, Harda. So they have a community program, and the bed of the khet and farm. So every farmers, they are going to every farmers and they saying that you please give us your bed, and we will plant a tree on that particular bed. The only purpose, the only role you will have to play is that just make sure that nobody destroy those beds. No animal or just nurture them for 3-4 years, and once they achieve some momentum, then they will self-sustainable growth. So with that sort of efforts, they are going to plant 10 million trees. So nowadays, a lot of knowledge is coming up, but for a country like India, it will take some more time. On the other side of challenge, as I mentioned, the awareness. If the mainstream buyers, mainstream companies, they can take the onus on themselves. They can take the responsibility that we will fund our upstream side suppliers. We will give them some advance money so that they can set the decarbonization approach. They can, whether they achieve the carbon credits or not, it's a different thing altogether. But at least they play some role in the decarbonization, which is the important part of the ESG. Because I have seen companies like Tata, they are hiring a lot of transgenders, they are hiring a lot of veterans. I have seen the store like Coroma. So a lot of the companies, these are propagating this kind of a culture. So ESG is coming to the practice, but yes, still long way to go for a country like India. And what I want is that from mainstream clients to the upstream side suppliers or MSME sector, if they can increase their awareness, they can come forward, they can openly talk to their buyers that yes, we are ready to move forward, we need some funds. I think the speed will be
good. I think you mentioned MSME, that's another big area. But I was very keen for you to share, and since we are specifically focusing on the E of ESG right now, and even more specifically on the waste aspect. So would be very keen to know from you whether you have examples of companies that you consult which are doing a great job when it comes to the E of waste recycling, and we're doing a better job in that. So any examples which you would like to share? That's number one. And two is, are there any trends worldwide on an industry basis that this is the industry where really the practices are not just evolved but they're mature?
Just a couple of short examples I can give. We are working with a company, a Vardhman Group in Punjab. So what they have started is that instead of using the fresh cotton, they are buying the recycled cotton from the market, and they are using them for the yarn manufacturing process. So initially, they asked us to conduct a study of a life cycle analysis on the basis of LCA, how much greenhouse gas emissions or how much embodied energy or embodied carbon it will save if we, instead of using a fresh cotton, we use the recycled cotton. So this is a good example how the companies are going forward in responsible consumption. On the market trend, there are like banking sectors and the renewable energy sectors. Their speed in terms of ESG is more. And I think beyond that, the manufacturing sector is also coming forward. I think in the next 1 year or next 2-3 years, I see a health sector is also coming up very fast. on promoting ESG. And because nowadays, after the carbon border tax, launched by the European Union, the 6 sectors: cement, steel, fertilizer, aluminium, hydrogen, and electricity. These sectors are anyway, because now it's becoming mandatory for them. So they are, gaining a track on developing an ESG framework. So I think these sectors and some more sectors on the banking plus the renewable energy sectors, they are the good hotspots working on the ESG side. And I give the example of Vardhman. I think similar kind of example, a lot of other companies are also coming up in different
So very hopeful on this. You sound very hopeful, and I think the regulatory framework is actually supporting this. But the word I was looking for at that time was greenwashing, and we see that greenwashing is become the trend. Worldwide today, the carbon credit market is being discredited because of something called greenwashing. And how do we really ensure that the carbon credit market is actually a market which doesn't really fall apart? Any quick word on this before we move to Varun and then to BK and Gayatri?
Yeah, so unfortunately, obviously greenwashing is there because we do a lot of validation on carbon credits project. The problem comes when, in case of cook stove projects or RED Plus projects. RED Plus is basically you are preserving or conserving the already forest which already existed. Sometimes what happens, because of the climate change, fires, and other issues related to animal harming them, or cook stoves are being distributed, but they are not being used by the actual users because their behavior that don't allow them to use something new. So because of that, there is no permanency. So because of that permanency, because of leakage issues, a lot of greenwashing is happening. And last year, Guardian also wrote a huge article on how the greenwashing is being done. Because when you estimate the carbon credits, and we have distributed 1 lakh cook stove or 1 million cook stove, but out of those 1 million cook stoves, how many are being utilized on a real-time basis? But now a new technology is coming up, DMRP. So companies are trying to put some electronic chip on these cook stoves so that real-time usage can be seen, whether after the distribution of 1 month they are still being utilized or they are being thrown away. So even the same is coming up in the forestry also. We will put in a chip and we can see the real-time growth of the forestry.
Great. So Varun, in a very short, maybe in a minute or two, if you can just give one specific challenge that you face in implementing ESG for your clients, and E of course in particular, and 2 is what would you recommend to any of the stakeholders?
Sure. I think first it's Thanks. So first I think is just the mindset, right? As in, let me give you an example. Shri Mukesh Bhai Ambani has announced 2035 as the net zero target for Reliance Group. Now that's audacious. They run the largest petrochemical plant in Jamnagar, right? So I think it's first about having that clear intent. Regulations come, everything is there at the backside. But first, I think you've got to have a very clear intent and put that stake in the ground. Very closely linked to mindset is unit economics. See, at the end of the day, net zero is great, but it has to either increase my productivity and or reduce my operating cost. And I think that's fundamental to scaling up any innovation. Now, if you just take a parallel example on EVs, right? So Tatas have currently crossed 100,000 units in 2023, which is just a drop in the ocean in the total ecosystem. But when you look at lithium-ion prices over the last 3 years, there's been a significant decline. And that's coming because of various reasons. There are supply chain related as well as demand related points. But the key point is unit economics.
Fantastic. I think the takeaway for me is that yes, the operating cost needs to be seen by the company. So we're talking about sustainability in a sense of that entire process. And that can only happen if operating costs in the long term are seen to be coming down.
And if I can very quickly make this point, please. One has to look at total cost of ownership versus just acquisition cost. So when you do a TCO, is where you look at the lifetime of the asset, whether it's a passenger vehicle, it's a commercial vehicle, or a material handling equipment. And I think that's the trick, right? You've got to demonstrate operating cost benefits to end customers to actually get this done.
Sure, that's wonderful. BKG, you had actually very explicitly shared about the fact that they are very clear challenges when it comes to implementation, because the scale you're talking about in terms of e-waste, recycling, and how it would really benefit back the ecosystem. Can you just share those challenges and what is your recommendation to deal with that challenge?
So I will divide this challenges into four parts. One is a legislation, and I will deal on this four later on. One is legislation, second is a liability, third is a liquidity, and fourth is a logistic. This four L's. And what I mean by legislation is stricter enforcement is an essential element of the success. Second is a liability. It sometimes becomes very difficult for different stakeholders to decide who is responsible for what. For collection to disposal and all these things sometimes gets diluted to a great extent. This needs to be plugged off. Third is, I'm talking about the liquidity. So investors have to look at this for promoting this industry. So that is the third part. And logistic, because we are a very large country. So obviously the collection and transportation at a economic value is sometimes difficult. So legislation, liability, liquidity, and logistics are the four major challenges I see. As far as individuals are concerned, there are two challenges and two choices they have sometimes. One is environmental responsibility or monetary consideration. So when we want to dispose of our e-waste for consideration, cash consideration, they forget that cost of the transportation to recycling is higher than the value what we can recover from the individual collections. So I would certainly request all the individual consumers who are otherwise also heads of many large organizations, so kindly consider environmental responsibility at a higher level than the cash consideration.
Excellent.
We started for the benefit of these individuals, we started a mobile application in the name of Book My Junk, which has been admired by the Prime Minister himself in his Mann Ki Baat last year in January. So I will appeal to all the individual consumers to kindly come forward and avail of this.
This is called Book My Junk.
Yes.
You might want to spread it. It is an app which is being spread by Modi ji, and basically the idea is to promote individuals to become more responsible in ensuring that it goes to the right recycler. Recycling cycle rather than going into the mining cycle. I think yesterday you were explaining beautifully about how the mining which happens in the unorganized sector, that is actually bringing carbon back into the cycle. So it's far more harmful. So just in order to make some cash out of it, we are really harming the environment back again. So thanks, BK. I think that's very well taken, and we hope that at the public awareness level and also at the policy level, maybe the government needs to bring this forth. Thank you so much. Gayatri, over to you. My questions to you really are again, what are the challenges? You've worked with several organizations, I'm presuming. And in terms of implementation of ESG, is there enough sensitivity in organizations? Are they really genuinely interested in doing it? Do they really have a governance structure which monitors that it is being done? Because Avinash, raised this whole point of whether the monitoring is happening or not, monitoring, reporting, and all of that. And what are your couple of recommendations? We are almost out of time, so in maybe a couple of minutes.
Sure. So when it is about sensitivities, I think corporates have enough sensitivities, and they are really at the aspiration level, they are committed and they are having strong intent. Of course, some of them do not, and that is where greenwashing happens, where it is all about creating a PR and branding, propaganda. So I'm not talking about those corporates, but then rest of them, including those that are not yet listed, there is a very clear intent. We are already working with some of the organizations that are not listed, but are preparing themselves from now itself to be GRI report ready. So that kind of intent is there, and that commitment does exist. The challenges where we see most of the problems arise, of course, awareness is the most important one, because even those who are aware about the climate change as a problem do not know what I'm supposed to do. Because just knowing that this is a problem doesn't help. As a business, what are the areas that I can focus on and what kind of interventions will bring help to me, which will help my business goals as well as the sustainability goals.
I think what Avinash, Gayatri, all of you are doing really is playing that important role to bridge the gap between awareness, sensitivity, and governance structures in the ESG space and what is currently available. So to speak, you're playing that very, very important role.
And there is one more thing which most of the points have been touched upon. Carbon credits have been very elaborately discussed. But there's one more element of plastic credits, which I think nobody spoke about. So I just want to bring it to the knowledge of audience. So we are also working on developing innovation credits for corporates to come and work with such agencies and organizations that are going to convert their plastic waste into usable products. So that way they will not only be benefiting those last mile rag pickers and people in the social strata who are actually getting impacted, but will also be adding business benefits to the overall.
And today evening we have a lot of them, by the way, who are going to be part of the award ceremony, so who are actually doing a great job of that. So so this has been a wonderful session. I hope it's been interesting for you all. It's a very new area for many of us, and just the knowledge of what is going on in this industry and how we can be part of it. All of us are capable of being part of this this whole sector of waste management, very responsible waste management. Each of us can play a very critical role. So thank you again, and I do hope that the challenges ahead convert into opportunities.